If I remember this correctly, and yeah, welcome back. The show is back on. For those of you who have been wondering what happened to me and wasn't necessarily paying attention to my Twitter feed or Instagram feed or my Facebook feed or my Patreon feed, basically YouTube shut my channel down. They shut my channel down for a week over what they call a content violation. I've appealed the violation, but they've also kind of made the point that because of COVID-19, that they probably can't get around to the appeal. So basically, the entire time frame for the entire week went by without them making a choice one way or the other on the appeal. But that said, I'm back. One of the topics I wanted to talk about, I know it's early in the morning, 3:31, but my channel's back on, so I feel like I want to do the news. Richard Nixon, if I remember the story correctly, Richard Nixon, during the Nixon tapes or on the Nixon tapes, is having a conversation about a position where he's putting a woman to fill. Now, Richard Nixon is putting a woman to fill this position because he knows that she is going to lose. And in knowing that she is going to lose, he would at the very least get credit for putting her up for the position and, to his glee, set women back for several years and trying to get any kind of level of instantiation in government itself. This is the level of machinations that take place in regards to your government and your political leaders. They call it political theater for a reason. In the case of Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden has somewhat of a unique issue. People who support Sanders, many of them are young, so let's say, 25 to 34, and very idealistic to the point where the policies matter more than just voting for any kind of random hack. Now, I would argue that that is actually the way to get those policies accomplished, and those people need to be very strident and loud in making it clear that Biden is not going to get their vote without supporting X or Y policy. But beyond that point, Joe Biden needs to come up with a way of getting those people to back him. Now, the reality of it is more people who were backing Sanders voted for Hillary Clinton than did backing Clinton during the Obama race than voted for Obama, meaning most of those people voted for John McCain. In the case, or more people voted for John McCain under Clinton than voted for Trump under Sanders, backing Sanders. Nevertheless, despite this, they always ask Sanders as if it's his responsibility to get supporters to back Joe Biden. That's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my life. The wild part about this, though, is from the standpoint of Biden's problem is that the overwhelming majority of the people are not enthused about his presidency. In fact, they would prefer probably a ham sandwich to run. The only difference in this case is they ended up with Joe Biden. Now, what Joe Biden also knows is that the overwhelming majority of people are backing him to stop Trump. From the standpoint of the youth vote, I think it was around 12 to 15% of people during the Clinton race voted either for Trump or didn't vote for Clinton, meaning they just didn't vote at all. Now, Biden wants to either keep that number the same or lower that number. And the problem is, if you just win the nomination in a bloodless primary process and you don't even appear, meaning just from the level of optics, to want to have any kind of level of concessions, then you could very well alienate people more than you alienated them during the primary process. So what Joe Biden wants is to give this impression that he's working with Sanders to come up with some kind of deals to move forward on. Here's the thing. At no point in this process would anybody balk and walk away if they didn't get what they wanted. Meaning, if they put up a petition, meaning Sanders people put up a proposal, and Joe Biden voted down the proposal, and let's say they didn't give him anything, do you honestly believe at any point in this process, Sanders or the people under Sanders would have came out and balked and said they're not going to back Joe Biden and they're not going to back this particular task force process? None of that stuff was going to happen. It was a foregone conclusion. If you get into a primary process and you say, I'm going to back my opponent regardless of the situation, well, you've already got. Ultimately, you've already said that regardless of what happens, whether they cheat you or otherwise, you are basically going to support people who in no way supports your interests. You're going to sheepdog. My point is, these task force are entirely there for the optics. The task force are not there to get anything legitimate accomplished. Even if they wrote up documents for the task force, that doesn't mean that Joe Biden is going to get into office and say, all right, I'm going to pursue this task force any more than he would get in and pursue the platform for whatever the party came up with. It's a nothing. Joe Biden is going to do whatever Joe Biden does in that office, and he's not going to be constrained by the actions of some task force that was there entirely for the optics of sheepdogging lefties into the party. They want to give this impression that they're amiable, that you can deal with them and they can come to some kind of resolution in regards to what they're trying to accomplish. But this is, of course, nonsense. At the end of the day, Joe Biden is the one who's going to run it. And if Sanders supporters balked or were against it, it's almost irrelevant because they weren't going to win the votes. Now, Clinton, when she was running against Obama, she got Secretary of State, meaning Obama wanted Clinton's support. And in order to get Clinton's support, he gave her Secretary of State. She had a position where she could maximize her chances of just taking off and running for the presidency. Sanders didn't even get that. Sanders got a task force that is going to put out proposals that Joe Biden, the moment he gets into office, if he gets into office, is going to immediately ignore. In the meetings that are taking place in the Rules Committee, the DNC Rules Committee, Nina Turner, in addition to a bunch of other Democrats, are engaging with this task force. And in dealing with the Rules Committee and everything else, I'm sorry, not the task force, the Rules Committee, and dealing with the DNC Rules Committee, the people in the Rules Committee, Nina Turner, or people who were backing Sanders, put forth a policy that the Democrats who were backing Biden didn't like. Call them children and proceeded to basically berate them, saying that they were losers and that they were going to lose anyway. I find this to be interesting because there's a reality to this that's legit. You don't call Nina Turner a child, so mark that. But from the standpoint of they were going to lose to begin with, this task force was not set up to do anything interesting, anything amazing, or anything else. The DNC convention, meaning the Rules Committee or the other committees, are not set up to do anything interesting or adventurous, nor will they go beyond anything that Joe Biden has stated he was going to push for. So no, they're not going to get rid of corporate money. No, they're not going to do Medicare for all. They're not going to get any of that stuff done. They're not going to put any of that stuff in the platform because they don't want to alienate the candidate themselves. The Sanders supporters that have involved themselves into this process have involved themselves in a process where they are going to continuously lose unless it's something that Joe Biden already agrees with. After all, they got the numbers, they got the majorities in the various committees. In this very specific case, though, calling his supporters children is way beyond the pale. And going beyond the pale from calling them children, the insults associated with the losing and everything else. Look, the losing part is true. The platform is pointless, but you can't call them children. Nina Turner responds to this provocation. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you the opportunity for allowing me to do it. And when I say it's brought to you by you, it gets this whole thing when I say I don't trust Google. Now you see why. So basically, they're at the DNC Convention Rules Committee. They're doing this as a virtual meeting. Now, Politico is covering this story, and Brent Welder, he's a Sanders appointee for the Convention Rules Committee, proposed a resolution to change the party's charter to refuse all corporate PAC dollars and limit corporate lobbyists from serving on the DNC for several years. Now, a Biden appointee called for it to be tabled, and basically tabled forever. Basically, they said we're going to table it until somebody takes it off the table. At least that's what Barney Frank said. Now, Welder didn't take that well and said that makes zero sense. Now, Jill Johnson, another Sanders appointee, said that other Sanders supporters urged that the proposal be brought to a vote in a closed-door breakout room by changing the background images on their screens to reflect their support. Now, I hope you understand what's taking place here. Sanders' team wants something put up in the Rules Committee for the DNC. The Biden team doesn't. The Sanders team, Biden's team basically said, look, we're going to table this. And we're going to just, keep it in limbo until somebody brings it down. The Sanders team decided on passive resistance by basically changing the background images on their screens to reflect their support for the policy. Now, one of the Biden appointees basically said, you are acting like children. You're going to lose anyway, so just get over it. And then the hosts closed the meeting so they couldn't see each other anymore. Now, basically, they were like, look, we want this policy. You guys don't want to back this policy. And, for the most part, plenty of policies that Sanders wanted that they just didn't back. But their thought was, we're going to have peaceful passive resistance by putting our screen up. They were told that they were acting like children, and then they shut it down, so the fact that the screens were up with the information didn't matter. Welder and another Sanders appointee who asked for anonymity said Biden appointees made those comments. Nina Turner said she heard them as well and said they came from Biden appointee or quote-unquote party diehards. Now, Turner obviously wasn't going to take this well. And her point, I'm trying to find her specific comments. Turner basically, right here, it was not only disturbing but disrespectful, said Nina Turner, Sanders' former campaign co-chair who served on the committee. Disgusting, disturbing, and unacceptable. And it's no way to restore faith in people who already suspect the Democratic Party is unfair. Another person in the meeting described it as full of crosstalk between a small number of people on both Biden and Sanders camps that made it difficult for the hearing to proceed, or for the bear to hear the proceedings, and some people did not know how to use the mute button. I don't think that's necessarily an excuse. Whether there's crosstalk or not, if somebody's saying you're children, well, that's a flat fact, either a yay or nay. If somebody says you guys are going to lose anyway, again, that's a flat fact, yay or nay. The reality of it is the DNC platform, or for that matter, the task force, they don't matter. Joe Biden is using the task force entirely just to kind of create this effect as if he's listening when, at the end of the day, he's going to get in office and do whatever he does. The same thing is true with the platform that the DNC gets from the DNC convention. Nobody that I am aware of has gone to office to say, all right, what's the first agenda on the platform? They don't do it. I understand that Sanders has been fighting in order to get people on the platform or on the various committees and everything else. But it's a moot point. You don't have the numbers to affect change. The Democratic Party doesn't even consider you a Democrat in many respects. And anything that they gave you was only given to you because they knew at the end of the day you had no power to affect your agenda in the various committees that these guys are working with in the DNC. Beyond that point, the deal that apparently Sanders and the Democratic Party worked out for Weaver to tell these guys to drop your other proposals, meaning Clinton gets Secretary of State, you get a few people on these meetings and whatnot, and these things don't mean a hill of beans, and yet your people get on these meetings and fight in a process that was already understood that they were going to lose, meaning it's a fait accompli. I kept saying that this is a bogus and a worthless waste of attention. And, it is. By the same token, I suppose the people that are there do believe that they're trying to get something accomplished, even if it's already a foregone conclusion that they weren't. If there was any chance of Sanders affecting his agenda being by having people on the various committees, they wouldn't have given him the people on the committees. They're freezing him out. But just because they're giving him a little bit of leeway, they're giving him leeway in areas that have no capacity to make any kind of lasting change. whether that's the task force, whether that's the committee hearings. Ultimately, it's all for naught. At the end of the day, they call his supporters children, and I suppose that's better than calling them racist and sexist and bigoted and uniquely hateful that they were calling his supporters. But this is coming from Politico, so it's not like they're making it up. And it gets across very clearly what they think of you. What they think of you. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.